Well, this might not be as impressive looking as that one that I installed, but it's a necessary part of the project. Just a hint, this is all part of our fresh water system. This is where I'm going to be supplying water to our hand sink and drinking water. So for water lines, I'm keeping this really simple. So I'm going to be using this 3/8 inch tubing. This is the same tubing that you would use to hook up a reverse osmosis water filter system. And you can use these little push connectors that are going to be really handy. I'll show you guys that soon. There it is. Now today, we're going to start water. We have our water line run to the sink, and that's about it. So I still need to put in the freshwater tanks, and we need to put in the system, the whole system. Now I did some research online. I looked at some different water systems for bus conversions, RVs, different things, how they work, pumps, and all that stuff. And I decided to go completely different direction and do my own thing. I'm going to experiment and see if I can make my own system that works the way I want it to work. So with that being said, I don't even know if this system's going to work. This is just a theory, a concept I have in my mind. I said, let's try it out. I'm going to start with this manifold. This is a stainless steel constant pressure manifold. Originally, I was going to put this right under here out of the way, but I'm not really liking how that is so close to my inverter and everything. It just kind of bothers me. So I was looking around for a new location, and I think I'm going to put it right here. Now originally I was going to route the wires down here and have them come up through the bottom of the box. That's why I mounted that so high. I ended up not doing that. So I have some space, and just enough space to mount my manifold. Don't worry about it being close to the electrical. It's not a problem. Now I have these U-bolts that I want to clamp it with, but I need to space it out away from that wall a little bit so that these threads aren't digging into my wood panel. So let me take a couple minutes to make a little bracket to put behind here to space it off the wood, and then we'll get that mounted up. So I looked around and I think I found something I can use. This piece of black ABS pipe, I'm going to try to make a bracket out of that. Okay, I think that's gonna work. So basically, they'll just go right behind here, kind of hug that downspout, hug the pipe, and it'll give me the spacer I need to get it off the wall so these pipe threads aren't digging in. And then I can just put it down here, right on there like that. I got these holes marked out. This is going to be for these little U-bolts. Okay, so far successful. I think it's going to work out, but now it's time to prep the manifold, which means I'm going to put a lot of the pieces in it. It'll be easier to do it here outside of the bus than when it's installed. I'm going to be using a PTFE thread tape along with a PTFE thread sealant combined, because stainless steel is a very difficult to join metal. It's not like brass where you can just tighten it down with some thread compound and it's fine. When you're joining stainless steel together, when you tighten it down, if you don't have a good lubricant in there, and that's what the PTFE is for, they'll actually seize up and you won't be able to get them apart. It'll essentially cold weld itself together. And that's common with stainless steel, and the only way to get it apart is to break it or ruin the threads. The other thing that could happen is leaks. They're notorious for leaking because they're hard to tighten down properly. So you got to use the right sealant, the right thread sealant and thread tape for stainless steel. Alright, we got it mounted up and I'm happy with it. It looks really good. It was a little tricky getting back here to do the bolts, but we did it. Let me show you what's going on. First of all, I plugged the ends. I'm not going to use them right now, but I do have an idea of maybe extending this later on, so they're good to have. This is a pressure relief valve. Okay, this is where the water will come in, I should say. Water coming in to the system. And this will release pressure if it gets over 100 psi. That way we're not ruining any of our equipment or bursting our lines. So it's just a safety valve. Obviously pressure gauge to tell us what our water pressure is at. Here is just a drain valve. Nothing too fancy. And down here is going to come out to the water. So that's going to be the output to the sink. The next step of this build for the plumbing is the water tanks. Instead of a typical freshwater tank like you would see, just a holding tank, I wanted a pressurized system. You see, what makes this system unique is I want it to be pumpless. I want to run water when I want, without any power, without any pump, without any switches, without any noise. Turn on the sink, the water comes out. So I wanted to accomplish this with pressure. I looked at various tanks online, and not a lot of tanks can hold pressure, and I would need a way to pressurize them. So then I got thinking about like well tanks and pressure tanks, and did some research. They weren't really fitting my needs because of the way they work. This is the solution I found. This is a reverse osmosis water storage tank. It works very similarly to a well tank. If you guys are familiar with well water, you need a pressure tank in your house. It stores water and it has an air bladder inside. The problem is, like I said, the well tanks weren't right for me, but I'm gonna try a reverse osmosis water tank because these work at a lower pressure. It's designed for that kind of like fill up and then complete empty out, because reverse osmosis takes a long time to filter. The water comes in very slowly, so this tank would fill over 24 hours maybe. So this tank is designed for that kind of use, and that's kind of what we're doing in here, where I want it to expel as much of the water as possible before needing to be refilled. Also, it's made for totally drinking water safe with stainless steel fittings and everything else. So that tank is 20 gallons, and a 20-gallon tank will give me about 14 gallons of water storage because some of it is taken up with that airspace. 14 gallons of water. I said that's good, but why not double it? So I got 2 tanks. They're gonna go side by side right here, taking up a ton of space, but that's okay. Now I wanted to come up with a way to secure them so they're not bouncing around. I mean, they're pretty solid, but we're in a moving vehicle. So, let me show you what I made. Well, here it is. I call this the yoke because, you know, oxen. Anyway, this is gonna be my bracket for the 2 water tanks. It's gonna attach right to the unistrut in here. So we got our cone nuts in the back and a nut in the front, clamping it all in. Now, to help cushion things a bit, I'm going to use this camper seal right where the tanks will sit. Oh, if it doesn't stick now, don't worry. It'll stick when the tanks are against it. Okay, so the idea was that these hooks I would use as tie downs because I was going to strap these in so they couldn't go anywhere. But these 2 side ones, they're touching the tanks. They're just there. I mean, if I push it into the foam, it touches. So that's how close it is. So that's not gonna work for me. I don't want anything touching the tanks like that. So I made some progress. We actually went to the store, picked up all new hardware, and I still couldn't make it work. Let me show you. What I tried picking up shorter bolts, I got them. I put them in here and it still hit the tank. It was just too close. So I ended up scrapping that whole idea of having it all in one unit, put a regular bolt in here, and I replaced this bolt with the eye, and now it fits. And I did the same thing with the middle and the other side, but I just put them up here above that. So I'm happy with how this is coming out. In my mind, I had it all in one unit, a nice little bracket / clamp. Not a big deal. And I don't know if I'm going to keep these straps. These are really heavy duty rubber straps. They feel really solid. These tanks, they feel like they're not going anywhere. I'm also going to be bolting these down to this panel on the floor. And once these are bolted down, they're not going to go anywhere. They're going to be solid. So let's continue on with the plumbing. And I've been doing that. This is actually the water line. What I did was, let me show you. I actually put one of these split loom tubings on the water line to help protect it, starting right there. Ran it down here under the power, around the outside, zip tied it here, and now it's just coming up loose. And this is where we left off, so let's continue on. Just finished up the main lines going from the tanks to the manifold to the sink. Looking good. I'm really happy with it so far. Now we just got one more job to do, and that's running the water in, so the inlet. So the idea is I'm thinking about putting a piece of PEX on here, going down straight behind these tanks and out the back wall. Here's my hose input. I'll show you that later. I'm thinking I might be able to squeeze this in right here, right next to this plastic. That will be a nice kind of obscure place for it where it won't get bumped or anything. Okay, I drilled my hole and that went totally awesome. Went so good. And I sent a piece of PEX through it. So I attached my Pex A fitting onto here, tightened it down with some wrenches. I'll show this again. This is my Pex Expander Tool, and this only works with a Pex A type Pex, which you use these little sleeves on the end of the pipe. You put the expander into the pipe and it stretches it around the fitting, and then when you put it on there, very quickly it constricts around it and it grabs tight. This is so much better than the typical Pex that you might see, the Pex B. One of the big advantages of Pex A is it has full flow fittings. Instead of a small fitting that fits inside the pipe stretches over the fitting. So you get larger fittings, larger valves, full flow, and a better, stronger connection every time. So now for the fun part, we're going to pressure test the system. I'm going to be using this little air inlet that we can screw onto our plumbing, and we're going to fill it with air. We're going to leave it, and we're going to wait as long as we can, all day, and we're going to make sure it's holding a steady pressure, and that'll tell us if there's any leaks in the lines before we go adding water to it and make a mess. So let's pressure test it and see if everything went smoothly. So I've pressurized the system. Luckily I have a pressure gauge here because I couldn't hook my pressure thing up to these threads. What I instead did was I put it here so I could put it into the inlet. The only problem is I can't use this gauge because this inlet has a check valve. So water can only come in and not out. And what that does is it won't let me read the pressure inside the bus because the valve closes and you don't know what the pressure is. So I used this to put air in the bus. The system is pressurized to just a hair over 30 psi, and we're going to let it sit, and we're going to come back and see if anything is leaking. All the valves are open except for, the sink and everything, but this will tell us if there's any leaks anywhere. So I guess we'll close it here. The water and the electric are finished. So like most of the things I do, it's very experimental. I just wanted to try it and see how it would work. There is some space loss because we have to store air as well as water. And there's a bit more weight because we have to use metal tanks instead of plastic. But if the system works the way it's supposed to, and I can't wait to try it with water, but if it works, this would be really cool to have this simple, silent system where as soon as you unhook, you don't have to worry about power. You just have your pressurized water until you refill again. I think that's pretty neat. Now the potential problems I'm seeing with this system is A, they don't put out enough water. How many gallons will they output before the pressure is too low to feed the sink? We'll have to see. The other thing I'm wondering is how long will these tanks last? Because there's a rubber bladder inside there to hold the water, and air separate from each other. And these tanks are normally put in people's houses and they sit still. With the vehicle moving around, shaking, bouncing, the water sloshing, will that rubber bladder wear out quicker? Will it burst? How long will it last? I have no idea. It's all an experiment. And if it doesn't work, if I find that these tanks aren't lasting long enough, that the bladder is wearing out, or we're not getting enough water, I'll pull them out and I'll do something different, and that's fine. But you got to start somewhere, and I always love experimenting and learning. So I'm excited to try it out. I got these secured. They're very solid. Between these straps, which I know it doesn't look like much, but these are very strong rubber and they're very tight. And they're screwed down with the base. So they're strapped against the wood, against the strut. Very solid. They're not going to go anywhere. When the doors are shut, there's nowhere to go anyway. I'm looking forward to testing it out, and I'll keep you updated. Is it good? Is it bad? I have no idea. So we just finished up the water side of our bus conversion. We still have to do the drains. That's coming soon. But next is going to be the system test and the pressure test results. So stay tuned for that. But that's all we have for now. So thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.
Bye.